Hello again, my name is Brian Venton from Townsville, Australia, and welcome to another Words of Hope pastoral conversation. Today's chat considers the question, who or what drives us, and is taken from 1 Corinthians 10:31, which reads, "So whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." You might not be aware, but the issues that Paul is addressing in this young church at Corinth are not dissimilar to the problems we face in our times. Essentially, they were asking, how do we position ourselves as followers of Christ while living in a culture that has a different set of values or priorities from our own? Leon Morris, in his commentary on 1 Corinthians, describes Corinth as a very cosmopolitan place. It was an important city, it was intellectually alert, materially prosperous, but morally corrupt. There was a pronounced tendency for its inhabitants to indulge their desires of whatever sort. And in the words of von Dobschutz, the ideal of the Corinthian was the reckless development of the individual, the merchant who made his gain by all and every means, the man of pleasure, surrendering himself to every conceivable lust, the athlete steeled to every bodily exercise and proud in his physical strength are the true Corinthian types. In a word, the man who recognised no superior and no law but his own desires. Now, it sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Every practice in Corinth had one essential premise, that is to dispense with any need of God and any accountability to him. It's into this context that Paul speaks. Now, let me flesh it out a bit for you. Our text argues the case that the primary driver for living should be the pursuit of the glory of God. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, it means to ascribe greatness to God, to honour him and hold him in high esteem, to extend great worth and to lift him up above all others and all things. For the follower of Christ, it's not so much something we do as a checklist each day to fulfil some sense of duty towards God, where we tick a few boxes as a pretext to demonstrate our piety. No, it's rather something we live out as a way of life. That is, our lives are lived in such a way that the full expression of our life is lived in an attitude of complete surrender and service to God. It's how we function as a way of life, as individuals in terms of our priorities, our decision-making, our sense of purpose, our ambitions, our motivations and our desires. Now, there are 2 points that I want to address here that I suggest might be hard for us to take on board. It could be quite challenging. Anything that dispenses with God is the antithesis of giving God glory. It is, in effect, the giving of worth or worship to someone or something other than God. Now, let me explain what I mean. Paul, in verse 16, uses the sacrament of the Lord's Supper as a descriptor of our relationship to Christ. Our relationship is as a participation or being a fellowship with Christ. The text says that the cup of blessing that we bless, is it not a participation or a koinonia, a fellowship in the blood of Christ? The bread that we break, is it not a participation in the body of Christ? But then Paul says something in verses 18 to 21 that goes a whole lot further, and I paraphrase it here. Essentially, he says, if we dispense with God from our lives, then we are in antithesis participating or having fellowship or worshipping at another altar, the altar in this case of demons. Now, that's a big statement. Leon Morris, further in his commentary, alerted me to this, and to be honest, I hadn't quite noticed the contextual argument or the progression of thought before. Paul doesn't dispute the contention of the Corinthians that an idol is not a god at all, but he will not agree that therefore idols in our lives can safely be treated as nothing more than blocks of wood and stone. He says, demons make use of man's readiness to worship idols, that is things. Thus, when people sacrifice to idols in that context, that is, devote their allegiance to things, it cannot be said that they are engaging in some neutral activity that has no meaning. They are in fact sacrificing to evil spirits. He argues to share food is to establish fellowship. Thus, they are entering into fellowship with demons. It's not logically possible for for people to be participants in both the Holy Communion and idol feasts, if they realise what they are doing. The one necessarily excludes the other. If a man is really in fellowship with the Lord, he cannot also be in fellowship with demons. Now that's pretty powerful stuff. Now, if you take the time to reflect on this point and perhaps even read the chapter at large, you'll see that it has great implications that challenge every aspect of what constitutes motivation in our life. If our allegiances are directed away from God, we are effectively in fellowship at another altar. Now, the second point I want to make here leads on from this. We can't have a bet each way with God. We can't live for God part-time where we give him a little bit of glory, but not all glory. Morris goes on and puts it this way. Paul, with deep emotion, counsels his dear friends to take the right course. He had already urged them to flee fornication, and now in verse 14 says to flee from idolatry. There is to be no leisurely contemplation or accommodation of sin in our lives, thinking that one can go so far and be safe from going any further. The only wise course is to have nothing to do with it. They must not try how near they can go, but how far they can fly and flee from it. Now, let me qualify this a little bit for us today. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about business, work, politics, hobbies, sport, and other social interests. The problem arises for us when these activities or actions become more important to us than the glory of God in our lives. It is not my job to suggest what you or others should or shouldn't do in this respect. Ultimately, that's an issue between you and God. Now, I can suggest parameters, I can alert you to issues that you may want to think about, I can extol virtue in one form or another, but God gives us the freedom to choose whether we eat or drink and do everything to the glory of God, or whether we decide to worship or give allegiance to or bow before an altar of our own desires. Now, this has been a pretty heavy pastoral chat today, and I trust that you have found it helpful and you understand a little clearer what it means in our culture to live for the glory of God as the principal driver behind all that we do. It's a whole new way of thinking and perhaps something you may have never considered until now. Again, thanks for watching, and please subscribe to the channel and share this video out to your networks if you've enjoyed it today. Until next week, God bless, and remember, whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. See you next week. Bye.